Hello and welcome to the D
and A of Home Interiors, the podcast which is all about empowering you to make confident interior and furnishing decisions for your home. I'm Audrey, founder of Audrey Whelan Interior Design.
And I'm Deirdre, founder of youfurnish.com, such 100 plus furniture retailers on one website. The DNA of Home Interiors is proudly sponsored by checkatrade.com. If you need help with your next home improvement project, you can search from over 39,000 recommended, vetted and monitored trades on checkatrade.com. I think the song goes, Audrey, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. And that's my terrible voice. I really shouldn't be singing. But we are here to talk all things about Christmas trends for 2021. Are you excited, or what does Christmas conjure up in you?
Well, I think, Christmas is so unknown for me this year in a lot of ways because as I'm sure our listeners have picked up on in previous episodes, I have mentioned the fact that we've moved, but we're actually about to move again, hopefully in the next few months. So we actually don't know where we'll be living at Christmas. So I think that brings with it a very broad blank canvas, if you like. So I am really open to kind of lots of these new ideas I've been reading about, thinking, can we make that work in a new house? So yeah, very, very excited at what lies ahead. What about you? What have you been picking up on?
So I am living in my two-bed apartment in London. We have a very small artificial tree, and we don't tend to go too big on Christmas versus what I would have done as a child. Now, having said that, I'm all about each year adding something, and ideally I've added it from a destination that I've been to this year. So earlier this year, I was down in Cornwall in July, and I already picked myself up my new little Christmas decorations for this year. So I will be adding those to my little tree. And I'm really excited about that, actually, because I love having the element of I found something, based on a trip I was on or based on a destination that I visited. I think it just brings a lot of meaning and brings back those memories as well of my trip to Cornwall.
Yeah, that's such a lovely idea, isn't it? Because I think, there was a time where almost I remember Christmas kind of tree styling changing from the more sort of ad hoc and eclectic, let's say, which I'm sure we probably both experienced growing up, where it was literally that mix of collected things that got given maybe to like a new baby in the house, then decorations that were made at play school and school, and they were sort of brought out year upon year. And then I remember like some kind of friends and neighbours and family members sort of like almost, casting all that away and getting like full sets of matching kind of, say, maybe it was gold and cream, like baubles and ribbons, or it might have been red and green, but everything
very coordinated.
So coordinated. I have to say, like, I was always very on the fence about that. I thought, it's a bit like sort of, department store-ish and not maybe reflecting the people who actually live there, as much as kind of the other concept. But on the other hand, I could see, what people were striving for, this very kind of coordinated look. So yeah, I love that idea, as I say, kind of probably more than the coordinated look of really personalising it and adding to it over time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where actually as a child growing up, I sort of looked at envy with all the perfectness of, what you saw in these magazines and in the department stores of why can't we have a tree that's just so perfectly coordinated? But now I'd struggle to leave all those other little bits out. Maybe one day I could have two trees and I could have one that's the perfect one and I can have one that's got all my eclectic mix of baubles from all around the place. Yeah. But I suppose thinking of 2021, it's been another year of upheaval, continued impacts of COVID. And we're going to discuss today, Audrey, all things Christmas trends that we're going to see this Christmas. So I suppose we've got to start with the tree. And the Nordman fir, it's just your traditional solid tree, isn't it? That's very much going to be in.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That is your kind of traditional base, isn't it? So, I mean, that gives you the scope to either go for that sort of, coordinated look we mentioned, but it also gives you the scope to kind of add in your own kind of personalized bits and make it your own.
And I think it's the smell, it's the sense of nostalgia with your traditional tree that's really driving that trend. And I suppose one of the big themes of the year was cottagecore. Now, cottagecore, we've discussed this many a time, Audrey, as well, is all about homeliness, all of your crockery, your tablecloths with your patterns. Nearly think of your granny's house growing up and you're pretty much there, all of the baking, all of those activities and crafts. And I suppose this hint to that smell that's bringing that nostalgia back of the fir tree, it's really probably at the core of that trend, isn't it?
Yeah. Certainly that thing of it not just being the kind of visual aspect, but, more of the senses being involved and inspired in getting into that Christmas spirit. I certainly remember, like, as a child growing up, kind of insisting that we had a real tree every year. And I loved that. And even, when you get a few needles falling off it, just that sort of, I suppose the evolution of it over those few weeks when it's in your house. But I have to say, as a grown up, I've actually never had a real tree. So we've actually got the same Christmas tree that we bought the year we bought our first home, which was back in 2005. And we definitely went through, certain years where we thought, oh gosh, this feels like terribly sort of like unimaginative. We're just using it time and time again, even though we would, add different decorations. But now it's so interesting because I think, that subject has been reframed a bit about the artificial tree. And as much as there's loads of benefits with the real tree, now I think more people are realizing that, having an artificial tree that you use for a very long time obviously is quite a sustainable option rather than, having to sadly kind of dispose of a tree that's cut down every single year.
Indeed, I think I've only ever had artificial trees, so I don't really have that longing for the firs. However, what I will say is that I think there's a huge benefit to the convenience of it, and of course, artificial trees have a lower carbon footprint. So that brings us, I think, nicely into the second theme, which is around sustainability. And of course, the reuse, reduce, recycle, I think, is coming in a big way. And I've read about reusable crackers. Have you read about those, Audrey?
Oh, no, I haven't. Tell me.
So reusable crackers, it's a really good idea, again, because if you think about all of the packaging, everything that's in there, I'm not quite sure how it's worked, but I would definitely be intrigued enough to think, I do like a cracker. I think they look lovely in terms of the table setting. I've never been overly enamored by anything that has come from a cracker mind. But I think that it's a lovely idea to have the experience of pulling the cracker. And if it's reusable, again, not sure how they get the mechanism to work, but I think that's amazing. Now, the other element of sustainability, Audrey, that I've been reading about is around homemade do-it-yourself decorations, maybe making your own garlands, using decorations and putting alternative twist on them. And it's the nod to that arts and craft that we've really seen throughout the year. And again, links back to cottagecore. Do you see a big increase in this yourself?
Yeah, so like last Christmas, I really noticed like a lot of wreath making workshops in particular. So obviously last year, a lot of them would have been online. So I expect we'll see a lot more of that this year, maybe some in person as well. But that idea that, yeah, people were wanting to not just sort of embellish and decorate their house for Christmas with bought items, but actually put that sort of time and personal touch in to making it themselves. And I think, for a lot of people in the past, the homemade decorations sort of stemmed from the kids kind of making them maybe at school and stuff. But this is like, a really interesting angle on it that, you can learn a new skill as well. And in fact, this year I have noticed occasionally like a wreath on a house just during the year, but not a Christmas wreath. So it's like somebody has learned their skill maybe at Christmas, or maybe it's been a separate thing, but then, apply that in a totally different way. So some of these I've seen are maybe with pastel colours, like in the summertime, or an Easter related one. So it's quite nice to to think of it that way, broader, I guess, than, just for Christmas. So it's not just making the Christmas thing, but it's learning something that you can apply then ongoing to different things. So I think that's probably quite appealing.
I personally really like the idea of a wreath, and I've never had one, but it's something I definitely would consider adding. It's one of those things I sort of feel like year on year, I like to be additive in terms of what I do.
Yeah.
So like that would be a nice one. And I feel like it's really beginning to take hold. And part of that is driven by doorscaping. Now, if you're wondering what doorscaping is, if you follow celebrities on Instagram, or indeed you might have read about it in different newspapers and magazines last year, it's where you do quite elaborate decorations around the outside of your house, around the doors. So it could be an arch that's filled with Christmas baubles and lots of flowers. There's even the little toy men, except like really giant versions of them. They've gone all out, and it was a really big thing last year. And I just noticed that everybody was doing it. It's a keeping up with the Jones thing, I think. But I'll be really interested to see whether that filters down to the ordinary Joe and Mary, whether we'll all be now trying to do the doorscaping. What do you think, Audrey?
Yeah, well, so actually doorscaping, I have to say, is a new term for me, like until you mentioned it today. I mean, I've been getting my head around the term tablescaping, which also obviously could be relevant to Christmas, but as a general term about, paying, a lot of attention to the table and how you lay it out. So I guess, doorscaping is then in line with that, but we're talking about doors rather than tables. But then when you started to kind of elaborate on that in terms of the front of the house, I mean, my mind then jumped to kind of, which is probably not what you're thinking, but these houses where you might get
the competition of how many lights and dancing reindeers,
like inflatable Santas and reindeers and snowmen and all the dripping lights. So this, I take it, the doorscaping.
This is trying to be a little bit more classier than
very
tacky,
sophisticated.
dare I say?
Yeah. Yes. So
each to their own.
Yeah, and so then is it, so obviously wreaths is the classic thing we think of on a door at Christmas, but what other things then have you seen on the door?
So it's not so much on the door, it's around the door, the frame, or if you have a porch. Yeah. So it could be that you've got a whole arch of flora and fauna and... Is flora and fauna the right word there?
Yes, that sounds right to me. Yeah,
double checking. One of those things that you use it all the time, and then all of a sudden it sounds strange one day.
Yeah.
So linking in then, red flowers, linking in Christmas bubbles, linking in the lights, potentially. So I'm thinking of Olivia Bowen. Last year, she had a beautiful display outside of her house around the front door and the porch. It was just spectacular, and it got a lot of PR and press coverage and on her Instagram. And I noticed then a lot of celebrities were doing this. So not applicable to me, Audrey, in an apartment. Obviously, I'm not going to go to that effort for the two other neighbours on my corridor to see. But it'll be interesting to see around people's homes if they start to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I did a little bit of digging because, of course, it's beautiful. I'd love it personally. But how much would it cost? And what I found out that the stylist for the equivalent of your celebrity doorscaping, you'd want to be budgeting about £1,000 for that.
Wow. Okay.
So a bit ching potentially, but maybe not.
Yeah, well, definitely a great kind of welcome home feel if you do something like that at Christmas. Might definitely consider something of that nature myself, given that for the last 10 years in London, although we did have a front door, it was right out on the pavement. So we didn't have any little pathway, nothing separating our door from the pavement. So it always felt like you couldn't really do anything out there because, well, either might disappear or just be in the way. Yeah.
Indeed. Quick shout out for our sponsor, checkatrade.com. Search recommended tradespeople online with checkatrade.com. I think, though, it's sort of reflective of that nod to bringing the outdoors in, the nature. And I think some key trends is going to be acorns. and wood accessories, along with evergreen florals, shimmering gold garlands, adding that bit of gold and warmth. But, I think outdoor trees, branches brought in, decorated. It's a nod to potentially the DIY and the homemade decorations as well. I think we're going to see a big, big uplift in that this year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is reflective of kind of what's been happening anyway, as you say. And also just going back to the idea of like making your own decorations or wreaths, then being able to use kind of found objects like acorns and twigs and different things, and like maybe spray paint or do creative tablescaping perhaps with them is
I love that word.
Well. Yeah, me too.
I feel like you're just dropping it there at every chance you get.
But also this thing of like texture. So, going back to that kind of classic image, like we talked about, of the very perfected, coordinated tree, there's quite an emphasis on sort of shiny, glossy, reflective materials. And, things like the acorns then are the complete opposite of that. So, but they actually sit quite well in unison. So a little bit of glossiness, but then you've got your real sort of rustic, warm, tactile textures then alongside that. And I think that's what makes a space then kind of feel cozier than if everything's, very sort of shiny and reflective.
Indeed. And speaking of, I suppose, shiny, reflective colours, we've talked about the tree, but we didn't talk about the lights. What's happening trend-wise for lights? And I think the debate is usually white versus coloured. What are we going to see, Audrey?
Yeah, so that's always been like a huge debate in our house, because I have always kind of leaned more towards white, and then husband likes the really bright coloured ones, flashing if possible.
This is why everybody needs two trees, because you can have both.
His and hers maybe in our house might be necessary. But actually, so having said all that, and I suppose, in a way, that's forced me to be more kind of open-minded and look beyond the more sort of classic kind of nature, I suppose, of the white. And so something I've been really drawn to in kind of what I've seen cropping up in terms of Christmas trends this year is something which was described as Technicolor Supernature. So I guess it's still.
Can you say that once more for us, Audrey, just so I make sure I haven't.
Technicolor Supernature. So this is the bit that attracted me, was the Technicolor, I have to say. So I'm sort of going back on, my maybe dislike of the coloured lights. So this trend is actually all about bringing in like neon, things inspired by virtual reality, cartoons, think about like really punchy colours, exaggerated features. And so I guess, rather than taking the traditional notion of the lights on the Christmas tree and just saying, are they white or are they coloured or flashing or not? This is taking it up one whole level further. And it's saying, right, sort of let's kind of throw that out the window, but look at it afresh. So like I'm seeing pictures of like neon lights on trees, maybe big star shapes, heart shapes, different things like that. But yet still bringing in those elements of nature with it. So, back to what we talked about the really shiny, kind of glossy, reflective stuff, but then in with elements of nature, which are more rustic as well. And obviously the tree itself, being that. So a real kind of, I suppose, mega eclectic mix. But what was really drawing me to it, I'm kind of even shocked that I might even be considering this. But I think what it is that actually, at the same time, when I was looking at images of traditional Christmas trees, I was thinking, I'm not even sure that fits in with our life anymore. It feels like so much has changed. And that to me is a symbol of like huge family gatherings and all the things that we haven't been able to do. And I suppose we don't really know if we are going to be able to do this Christmas. So I just felt really inspired looking at kind of new ways of being able to do things. And I guess the real fun aspect was really appealing as well, because I suppose in a lot of things recently over the past kind of 18 months, we have been kind of forced to move away from tradition or what we might have just done without thinking too much and look at, reinventing things and doing things to kind of suit, the changes we've had to undergo. So I found that quite exciting.
I think as well, depending upon your situation and where you are, I've seen a lot of the flat trees that are nearly like in a bit of a pyramid that you can actually just hang up on the wall, and maybe they're made of wooden sticks. And for a small space like a small apartment, actually that's a really good solution, and you don't need a big Christmas tree. So I think depending upon people, even for storage afterwards, solutions like that can be really, really good. And you can still go and visit your nice Christmas trees. If it's, in Claridge's hotel, I always like to go in and see their Christmas tree because it's very beautiful and it's always designed by a Dolce & Gabbana or somebody else. And, they do all sorts of that funky creative stuff that you probably would never do at home. And I'm thinking of the year that they had it as an upside down tree. So it was inverted and all a bit crazy, but interesting nonetheless. Or, the big Christmas tree that might be in a Regent's Park or wherever you are. So I think you can get that fix even if it's not something that you want to do in your own home.
Yeah, you certainly can. And I think actually we all respond, like anybody who wants to decorate for Christmas and who has that kind of tradition of, Christmas that they want to kind of continue. I think we all respond to that image of the Christmas tree. It's almost like, as you say, it doesn't even have to be a real tree. It's like the silhouette of a tree or that shape on the wall. That still conjures up so many memories and associations. So it can be something much more contemporary or sort of thinking outside the box on it to suit, maybe smaller spaces and stuff, or just because, you don't want to go so traditional with it. But I think it is amazing that the way our minds are still linked back to that shape.
Yes. And last accessory to our tree that's going to be trending this year is tree skirts or collars. Audrey, what are your thoughts on these?
Oh gosh, this is another one I haven't heard about. So I've definitely been sticking with this more kind of, neon, new age neon look. But what have you seen in the tree department? Skirt department, I should say.
So what this is that it could be like fake snow, the sort of, it's not foam, what is it? The wool that goes around the bottom of the tree that sort of will hide all of, if you've got an artificial tree, you tend to have a stand which doesn't look that nice. But it really just defines that area around the tree. You can drop the presents on it, etc. as well. So particularly, I think I was attracted to the ones that have snow. Now, I actually did this last year, but of course I did my little personalized attempt at it. So I had received a box and whatever was in it, there was a lot of the little white styrofoam packaging to keep it safe. And I was like, oh, this looks like snow. And it was really light and fun to throw up. And I actually laid it out all around the Christmas tree. And it was like a little snowy base. So it's not something I'm hitting my DIY and my self-decor and making homemade decorations in that regard. But I've kept them all. I've put them in the box afterwards. And I'll be rolling that out again this year.
Yeah, wow. Sounds like a good idea. I know in the past, sometimes people would also use those kind of things to like cover up if the base of the tree, like if it's an artificial tree and it's on a kind of a plastic stand or something.
Exactly.
And you just want to kind of hide that, but I think my favorite thing for the bottom of a tree is like a big kind of bucket, a big pot that it sits in, even if it is an artificial tree.
Stand, yeah. So, Audrey, we're nearly there. Lots of interesting trends coming out. And my favourite has to be the Technicolor Supernature, just because it's such a mouthful to say. I love that. But talk to me about timing, because last year we were all in lockdown. And what we saw is Christmas came early in terms of decorations in people's houses, putting up the trees earlier. What's going to happen this year?
Yeah, I think it will be early. I mean, I've already been getting some messages about how Santa Claus needs the orders in extra early this year, especially here in Ireland because of Brexit. And there's a few things around that that people need to be conscious of. So I think once then people start thinking, about Santa Claus coming, then the tree needs to go up. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we do see things happening a bit earlier. And if we continue to be at home more as well for the next few months, then why not, I think.
I concur with you. I definitely think Christmas is going to come early again this year in terms of seeing the decorations up and about. So, Audrey, you got to tell me, what is your Christmas movie that you'll be watching this Christmas? Is that going to be a new twist, or are you going with the traditional one?
Yeah. I've got. I can't really think of any new Christmas movies, but an old favourite, let's say, is Love Actually. I feel like I could watch that every year still.
Bit of Hugh Grant and Martina McCutcheon. Very good.
Yes.
It is Martina McCutcheon, yeah. And Keira Knightley. It's a very big cast in there.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And on my side, my go-to Christmas movie, it's not Christmas until I've seen it, is Home Alone.
Oh, yeah, that is a great classic.
So that's what I'll be watching. Yeah. Those trends will not change on that side.
No. It's always nice to, that's the tradition side of it, isn't it? Yeah, just things that bring back those memories. That's really what it's all about. Yeah, good. Well, happy Christmas, everyone. If you enjoyed our podcast, we would be delighted if you could rate, review, and subscribe on your favourite podcast provider. This will help others who are seeking home and furnishing advice and inspiration discover the DNA of home interiors. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at the DNA of Home Interiors.
If you are looking for inspiration and help in designing your home interiors, take a look at Audrey Whelan's masterclasses on audreywhelan.com/events. And don't forget to check out youfurnish.com, a search and comparison website which helps connect people with amazing furniture from over 100 retailers. We designed it to solve the problem we and thousands like us faced furnishing our homes. And now we are really excited that everyone can search, discover, compare and shop for their home all in one place.
Thank you to our sponsor checkatrade.com for their support in bringing this episode to you. And most importantly, thank you all for listening today.
We hope you can join us next time.